Services Secretary Shri Sanjay Malhotra, Additional Secretary Financial Services Shri Amit Agarwal, Joint Secretary DIPAM Dr. Alok Pandey. My warm welcome to the dignitaries on the dais. To start with, Secretary DIPAM will give his opening remarks. After that, we'll take some questions. Over to Secretary DIPAM.
मित्रों, आपको मैं याद दिलाना चाहूँगा कि माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी ने 2021 के भाषण में, बजट भाषण में IPO ऑफ LIC को अनाउंस किया था। उसके बाद कोविड-19 पेंडेमिक मार्च 2020 के बावजूद हमने प्री ट्रांजैक्शन एडवाइजर्स की नियुक्ति की और उसके बाद रिपोर्टिंग एक्चुअरी की नियुक्ति दिसंबर 2020 में की। बजट स्पीच 21-22 में माननीय मंत्री जी ने, वित्त मंत्री जी ने उसके बारे में और विशेष सूचना दी और उसके बाद संसद द्वारा LIC एक्ट का अमेंडमेंट हुआ अप्रैल 2021 में टू फैसिलिटेट लिस्टिंग ऑफ LIC। और उस एक्ट के जरिए एक स्पेशल कैटेगरी पॉलिसी होल्डर्स की भी इनकॉर्पोरेट की गई, चूँकि LIC के फॉर्मेशन में पॉलिसी होल्डर्स काफ़ी प्रमुख भूमिका निभाए हैं ओवर द इयर्स। उसको देखते हुए पार्लियामेंट के निर्देशानुसार ये कैटेगरी इंट्रोड्यूस की गई। तत्पश्चात CCA द्वारा, कैबिनेट कमेटी ऑफ इकोनॉमिक अफेयर्स की कमेटी के द्वारा 8/7/2021 में, मतलब 8 जुलाई 2021 में LIC के लिस्टिंग ऑफ शेयर्स को करने के लिए मंजूरी मिली IPO की। और इस बीच में कॉरपोरेशन जो LIC है उनको एक न्यू एक्चुअरियल सॉफ्टवेयर इन लाइन विद द इंडस्ट्री भी करना पड़ा, क्योंकि एम्बेडेड वैल्यू जो एक रिक्वायरमेंट थी लिस्टिंग के लिए वो LIC पहले नहीं करती थी, तो उसको करने के लिए उसकी आवश्यकता थी। और ये सारे डिटेल्ड एक्सरसाइज के बाद 30 सितंबर 2021 में एक एम्बेडेड वैल्यू कॉरपोरेशन की निर्धारित की गई और 5.39 लाख करोड़ अप्रॉक्सीमेटली एम्बेडेड वैल्यू का निर्धारण हुआ। Post that necessary statutory requirements, LIC filed the DRHP on 13th of February 2022, and then RHP was also filed on 26/4/2020. Given the unprecedented size of the IPO, special measures were taken for preparedness of the entire banking, capital markets and payment ecosystem. A working group comprising public sector banks, other banks, stakeholders, Department of Financial Services, Indian Bank Association, NPCI, SEBI, and Registrar and TA agent was constituted last year. And this group met several times since then to bring about infrastructure augmentation and another systemic improvements for all intermediaries. A special drive was run by LIC and all the major banks to increase awareness for ESBA and PAN linkage in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. A longer window of 6 days was allowed for the IPO to facilitate people across the country to participate and to ensure that there is no access load on the stock exchanges on the day of issue closure. A 24/7 helpline and call center was run by RTA to avoid any technical glitches and offer a seamless investor experience. Overall efforts have led to the opening of several new demat accounts. It's an opportunity which has been provided a very large public sector corporation. When we are trying to list it, we should give the widest opportunity to the retail investors. And I am pleased to inform you that this offer which was made, and the IPO offer which started on 4th of May has closed today at 7 p.m. and it has met with tremendous success from all categories of investors, namely policyholders, where we got tremendous response, and we also got good response from retail investors, as well as other categories like QIBs and NIs. So overall, just pleased to inform you that this issue closes today, and this long exercise which was undertaken will eventually lead to the listing of the LIC, and it will not only deepen capital markets, will also facilitate a large number of investors into publicly owned company, and they could have a small share of that in the form of shares of the company. And the policy holders have also supported this exercise wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now take some questions. Okay, 1 to 1.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, sir. Sapna here from CNBC TV 18. So the listing, I suppose, is on 17th of May as of now. You had mentioned subject to regulatory conditions. What's the plan on that front? Because this is a price band right now, and issue has been oversubscribed quite handsomely. What is it that we can expect in the listing day? And, post that, suppose, this has happened with New India. Just giving an example. Suppose, it trades at a lower price later on. How do you look at that? Of course, this is something that I'm looking into the future as of now, but any thoughts on that front? And second, sir, given the way that the market has become even more challenging, rupees at a new, year low now, your forex reserves are also low, your inflation is rising. So now in this overall macro challenging environment, how do you take the rest of the disinvestment agenda forward post the success of LIC IPO? Thank you, sir.
Well, I think I'll restrict my answers to the IPO and post rather than the broader issue of disinvestment. The procedure is, as you know, that there will be an allotment. The allotment will be, because the entire system has already been well described in the prospectus, and I'll ask Alok to subsequently clarify to you which are the clauses which will give you the allocation principle. So the plan is to have an allocation on 12th. That means what we call allotment. And thereafter, as you know, that those who are allotted, their shares come to their demat accounts, and those where to that extent that is not allotted, the money which is blocked, that is released. Because money so far is not really into the system, but it is blocked actually through a system called ESBA, which is application supported by this thing, and also the UPI-based system. And as on 17th, when it is listed, before that, the stocks have to be in the accounts of demat accounts of the people to enable them to trade. And those who haven't been able to get it, or those who have got it proportionately, the rest of the things which is not allotted, their money is deblocked. So all these processes will be done through the usual strong systems, and there are different intermediaries, registrar and transfer agents are there. Then you have exchanges, you have this thing, and under the overall guidance of SEBI, the rules and regulations framed by SEBI, this is done. Well, I think this is for the markets to do, and this is the people are there to market. As you know that, last few days when there things is there, investors have been, taking their own calls whether to invest or not. You have several analysts, researchers, others, people have been advising. So investment is some call which the investors have to take. But we have facilitated the investor in all possible way in terms of information that was plentifully available. DRHP was a very detailed document which contained several things. and different risk factors were duly also provided to the investors. And let us hope that everything goes well on the listing day.
110.
Just to supplement, as Secretary DIPAM has mentioned, I think there is, and this was mentioned by me in the earlier press conference before the IPO, also that the pricing that we have done is keeping in view the core intrinsic value and not, on the basis of the day-to-day fluctuations and the future potential of growth. So that value is already embedded in the company. I would say we should not be, and that is true, for any investor, not to look at it, on a day-to-day basis on, how the pricing is going to be on the day of the IPO. Let's look at it as a long-term or even a medium-term to long-term investment. The pricing we have done is fair, and we are hopeful that in the short, medium, and long term, the value that we have offered should give decent returns.
Sir, Tarun Sharma from Z Business. So first of all, congratulations for your successful, it's kind of a successful IPO, sir. इससे दो सवाल हैं. एक तो ये देश में सबसे ज़्यादा यदि किसी IPO में सब्सक्रिप्शन आया है तो वो LIC है. लेकिन इसके साथ एक जिम्मेदारी और DFS और DIPAM सेबी की बन जाती है, क्योंकि देखा है कि सर जो पहले के जो IPOs हैं उसमें जिन लोगों को IPO नहीं लगता है उनका जो पैसे का जो ब्लॉकेज होता है वो एक साल, 1.5 साल तक वापस नहीं हो पाता है. ये शिकायतें पहले सेबी के पास भी रही हैं और इस पे डिस्कशन पेपर भी सेबी ने निकाला था. तो इसके लिए सर आपने कोई अलग से कोई मैंडेट बैंक्स को दिया है कि क्योंकि LIC के बाद 2 बड़े IPO लाइनअप हैं. और दूसरा सर, फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स का ज़्यादा इंटरेस्ट इस IPO में देखने को नहीं मिला. 3 या 4 सॉवरेन फंड्स ने पैसा लगाया. तो क्या कोई पर्टिकुलर रीज़न था सर इस चीज़ के लिए? क्योंकि जब पहले आपने रोड शोज़ किए थे तो काफ़ी अच्छा रिस्पांस देखने को मिला.
पहले तो मैं आपसे इस बात से सहमत नहीं हूं कि जो आप डेटा दे रहे हैं कि 1-1.5 साल तक नहीं आता. यदि कुछ ग्रीवांसेस होते हैं तो एक सिस्टम है ग्रीवांस रिड्रेसल का. हम इस बात पे बहुत ज़्यादा सजग हैं और सेबी भी इस बात पे बहुत ज़्यादा जोर देते हैं कि किसी भी इन्वेस्टर्स का जो पैसा है वो तुरंत वापस आना चाहिए. और यदि कोई ऐसी शिकायत होती है तो उसका एक समाधान के सिस्टम्स हैं. तो मैंने जो आपको बताया कि 24/7 मतलब आपकी जो बुराई कैसे किस कैटेगरी में आपको करना है और इस तरह की चीज़ों के लिए ये तत्काल ये जो आपकी जारी रही ताकि कम से कम मिस्टेक्स हों. लेकिन जब अलॉटमेंट हो जाती है तो उसके बाद तो अनब्लॉक्ड अमाउंट आएगा ही. और यदि कोई ऐसी दिक्कत आती है तो आप हमें बताएं, क्योंकि इसके लिए सारी व्यवस्थाएं हैं. तो मतलब ये नहीं हम कह सकते कि आपका पैसा वापस नहीं आएगा यदि आपने, तो सारा सिस्टम बना हुआ है और वो हर लेवल पे मॉनिटर होता है.
125. सुनील.
देखिए, हम तो अब जब फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स का जो जैसे सब इन्वेस्टर्स हैं तो फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स भी अपना कॉल लेते हैं. मुझे तो इस बात की एक तरफ से हम अच्छे दृष्टि से भी इसको देख सकते हैं कि ये बिल्कुल आत्मनिर्भर, आप इस इशू को आत्मनिर्भर भारत का एक उदाहरण दे सकते हैं कि एक कैपेसिटी है कि एक बड़ा इशू इंडिया ने पुल ऑफ किया है. क्योंकि आप देखिए कि इसको इतने नंबर जो हैं, जिस हिसाब से लोगों ने दूर दराज के खिलाफ बड़े नए लोगों ने आके किया है, तो वो ये दिखाता है कि हमारे कैपिटल मार्केट्स में हमारे इन्वेस्टर में भी क्षमता काफ़ी बढ़ चुकी है कि हम खाली FIIs पे ही निर्भर रह के नहीं, हम वैसे भी अपनी कैपिटल मार्केट्स चला सकते हैं. वो भी वेलकम हैं और कुछ लोग आए भी हैं. बट हाँ, ये सच है कि प्रिडोमिनेंटली दिस इशू हैज़ बिन डोमेस्टिकली लिफ्टेड.
Sir, the other way to look at it is also that there have been net FII outflows. And on the other hand, we find an inflow here. So despite there being outflows, there is an inflow and there is an investment for LIC, which speaks well of LIC as a company.
So Meghna Mittal from ET Now, I wanted to add to that question. Has the investment limit been reached for the FIIs? And secondly, because of this geopolitical uncertainty, will going ahead the other transactions that DIPAM makes, will this be kept in mind, the lesser interest of the FIIs?
FIIs, हमने तो dilution ही 3.5% का किया है, तो उसमें से भी एक FIIs would have actually got a sliver. वो भी हम कहते हैं कि उतना नहीं आए हैं, तो वो तो इन्वेस्टमेंट लिमिट वगैरह का तो प्रश्न ही नहीं उठता, ऑब्वियस ही है ना, क्योंकि वो तो 20% तक जा सकते हैं, लेकिन अभी तो डाइल्यूशन ही 3.5% हुआ है.
107.
Sir.
नहीं, वो मैंने पहले भी आपकी in the last press conference this was raised, and we in the very first press conference when we had announced in Mumbai and subsequently in Delhi, that we have kept that issue considering the current market environment, and also we have to see the crowd out effect of that on other markets, capital markets. So given the overall macro situation and the situation, that size was considered appropriate. Obviously, that is also one of the reasons, I mean, because investment pool obviously gets reduced under certain unconditioned, when the conditions are relatively uncertain. But the point is that, there will always be this issue whether this is the right time. I think the proof of the pudding also lies in its eating. And the IPO has been successfully pulled off.
सर, मैं लक्ष्मण CNBC आवाज़ से, जिस तरह से IPO का सब्सक्रिप्शन हुआ 3 गुना लगभग गया, तो क्या 3.5% का जो हम लोग स्टेक सेल कर रहे थे उसको बढ़ाएंगे नियर फ्यूचर में, चूँकि काफ़ी उत्साहजनक रिस्पांस मिला है?
नहीं, उसको नहीं कर सकते. हमने जो इशू किया है, जो जिस इशू में गए थे, नियम के मुताबिक हम उतना ही अलॉट कर सकते हैं जो हमने ऑफर में दिया है. नहीं, उसमें तो हमने ये कहा है कि 6 months तक तो वैसे ही अलाउड नहीं है. हमारे प्रोस्पेक्टस में बताया है कि हम 1 साल तक FPO नहीं करेंगे.
Yeah, 47.
Sir, this is Srivat from Business Line newspaper. Sir, if you could give us some sense on, given the mega IPO that you have successfully closed, does it mean that LIC will walk into the benchmark Sensex or Nifty from day one, or would a track record of trading be allowed before it walks into the benchmark indices? So what is the process to be followed?
The benchmark indices, they have their own process, which requires a certain point of trading, certain period of trading. There's also certain amount of trading, also certain amount of float. So eventually that will be the case, but it is not immediately in the near future, because first, there has to be a certain point which has to elapse after listing. And there is a certain amount of float which needs to be achieved.
And so, if I can have a supplementary, what about the aspect of LIC featuring in overseas indices like MSCI? Would that also have to wait?
It is the same thing. Every indices, in order to include this thing, they have the norms. And LIC after listing must also, fulfill those norms before they are included.
105.
Sir, this close to 21,000 crore that will be raising, so obviously it is understood that it is over and above the 65,000 crore that has been projected in the budget from disinvestment receipts. So are we to add 65 plus 21? How will you look at?
Actually, the way the budgeting system functions, it works for the financial year, whatever the receipts and whatever the expenditure. So there is no system of carry forward or carry thing and all that. Whatever comes in, that's accounted for. Whatever doesn't come in, like for example, we started 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago into this process, and it's now being credited, so it will come to this account. So it works like that. It's not any accrual-based system. It's basically a cash-based system in that system. So whatever we need to raise, that has to be, those transactions have to be completed. A disinvestment transaction completed is only one which will give you the receipts.
24.
सर मैं शैलेश यादव हूँ सर ANI न्यूज़ एजेंसी से। सर आज IPO बंद हुआ और आज ही जो है रुपया डॉलर के मुकाबले जो है लोएस्ट रहा है। इसके बारे में अगर आप दोनों में से कोई बोल सकें कि किस तरह से देखते हैं इसको।
नहीं तो मार्केट कंडीशंस तो अब हम उसमें कमेंट नहीं कर रहे हैं, तो मार्केट कंडीशंस तो हैं जो हैं, बिकॉज देयर आर a lot of geopolitical and other factors which are impacting the markets.
110.
हेलो सर, प्रकाश पेदशी हूँ, ET नाउ स्वदेश। मेरा सवाल ये है कि पहला तो ये कि अपोजिशन पार्टीज वैल्यूएशन पर सवाल उठा रही हैं, इस पर आपका क्या जवाब होगा? और दूसरा ये कि क्या आप इस बात को लेकर सेबी के समक्ष जा रहे हैं कि जो 25% मिनिमम पब्लिक शेयर होल्डिंग की बात है 5 साल में, इस 5 साल के टेन्योर को बढ़ाया जाए?
नहीं, मैं उस पर कोई कमेंट नहीं करना चाहूँगा। हमने अभी वी हैव जस्ट क्लोज द इशू एंड वी डोंट वांट टू मेक एनी कमेंट्स व्हिच विल ऑन वैल्यूएशन और एनी अदर थिंग्स, क्योंकि इस समय हमें आई थिंक इतना हमें रिस्ट्रेंट है कि हम उसके वो जवाब नहीं दे। हमने इंफॉर्मेशन दी है सभी तरह की एंड एवरीवन इज फ्री टू एनालाइज इट। At this moment, that's not the right time to respond to these questions, both of them.
32.
So how much would you actually, I mean, if you have an exact figure of how much would you raise through this IPO, if you have worked out the math?
हाँ, आलोक बताइए।
You see, there is a discount which is offered to policyholders and also to our retail investors together with employees. So the exact numbers we can't share at the moment. The thing is that once this exercise is completed, after that a lot of backroom activity takes place between the registrar and the stock exchanges and our merchant bankers to identify the eligible people who are there in the IPO allocation process. Because क्या होता है कि कई बार लोग गलत कैटेगरी में लगा देते हैं एप्लीकेशन, तो वो एप्लीकेशन इनवैलिड हो जाती है। बट मोटा मोटा जो हम लोग का था कि 21,000 करोड़ का करीब इशू है, तो उसमें आफ्टर डिस्काउंट 20,500 करोड़ के आसपास की रिसीट्स एक्सपेक्टेड है।
So congratulations. You've done this yet again despite the external hurdles, and like you said, tremendous response. So going forward, more tasks for DIPAM. What is the kind of response you're expecting now on IDBI disinvestment? Because I know that the road shows are on. How's the road looking for that? Sorry for deviating, sir, but not many opportunities we get to ask this.
I think we'll give you the opportunity. I think this is a time we don't really expand the thing because I think there's a short press conference and yeah.
125.
Good evening, sir. Nikunj from Business Standard. So you said this IPO has been mostly lifted domestically by domestic investors, and this is a big thing considering the size of LIC. So will the government come up with a mechanism to protect markets from such a future shocks? This is a frequent activity. FPIs, foreign investors do tend to pull out money whenever there are global reasons or the Fed hikes its interest rates. So will there be probably a mechanism that the government together with SEBI come up with to protect our markets from such future shocks?
Chance.
SEBI is always there to protect the interest of the minority shareholders, and they see to it that, they're given a fair chance. The system of QIBs is also one way, because if you cannot be carried away, because the certain informed investors are there to at least see that whatever is being offered is correct. So all these norms have been, I think SEBI has worked out after a lot of consultation with the market players, with the consultation papers. Then the other issue is also, the issue of, equity risk. So obviously, I think there's a lot of investment protection programs in terms of making them aware, in terms of because whenever it's basically a risk and reward. There is an element of more security in some of the instruments, like, for example, bank deposits or bank FDs, but then the return may be lower. There may be a higher return in equities, but then risk may be higher. So it's a risk-reward thing, and the different kinds of investors and different thing, and there is a portfolio approach which is recommended, that not to put all eggs in one basket, and the people are getting a reasonable return because something moves up, something moves down. Market happens all the time. So I think this is where we are talking of capital markets. There is an opportunity. There is also a risk. And overall, you have to say कि time horizon आपका क्या है. यदि आपका time horizon day to day नहीं है, day traders का different way से वो देखते हैं. जो लोग short term देखते हैं, वो different medium term, long term investors different way से देखते हैं. तो वो day to day movement से इतना प्रभावित नहीं होते, क्योंकि उनको पता है कि आज यदि गिरा है तो कल चढ़ेगा भी. तो ये तो स्टॉक मार्केट का जो है उसके बारे में बहुत एजुकेशन आप देखिए डिफरेंट मीडिया के माध्यम से लोगों को बताई जाती हैं. सो आई थिंक बियॉन्ड दैट आई डोंट थिंक दैट देयर इज एनीथिंग आई कैन ऐड. नहीं, अभी ये आई थिंक इट इज़ अ लिटिल प्रीमैच्योर, बट अभी तो आई थिंक इशू बंद हुआ है आज. सो वॉट एवर दिस काइंड ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन, ये सब तरह की इंफॉर्मेशन दी गई है टू इन फेम ऑफ DRHP एंड अदर्स, और लोगों को मौका है इन्फॉर्म्ड जजमेंट का. सो वी डोंट वांट टू इन एनी वे इन्फ्लुएंस देम और गारंटी देम कि वो हमारा वो नहीं है. एक फेयर लेवल प्लेइंग फील्ड, फेयर सिस्टम दैट वी आर प्रॉमिसिंग, and rest I think the investors have to take their call.
It's a listed entity. Would interest of shareholders be paramount or the policy holders?
There is always a balance. There is in any corporation or any company, there is always a balance. For example, there are employees also in the company. There are external people also which are there. So I think there is a concept called balance scorecard in academic literature. यदि कोई कॉर्पोरेशन को अच्छा करना है तो वो एटलीस्ट 3-4 जो इम्पोर्टेंट स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं उनको बैलेंस करती है. तो LIC को पॉलिसी होल्डर्स जो हैं वही तो पॉलिसी होल्डर, यदि वो पॉलिसी होल्डर्स का LIC ख्याल नहीं रखेगी तो पॉलिसी होल्डर्स एग्जिट करेंगे, तो उससे LIC को क्या फ़ायदा होगा. तो ये तो बैलेंस है, शेयर होल्डर्स का भी ख्याल रखना है और पॉलिसी होल्डर्स का भी ख्याल रखना है, क्योंकि यदि कैपिटल की रिक्वायरमेंट होती है तो शेयर होल्डर्स को कैपिटल भी लानी है, क्योंकि किसी भी काम के लिए कैपिटल की भी ज़रूरत होती है. तो इसलिए ये एक बैलेंस है, और ये बैलेंसिंग एक्सरसाइज आई एम श्योर जो LIC का जो बोर्ड है एंड अ कॉम्पिटेंट बोर्ड विल डेफिनेटली लुक इनटू इट ऑलवेज.
Okay.
नहीं, वो क्वेश्चन नहीं था. वो ये कह रहे थे कि आप पॉलिसी होल्डर्स का ख्याल रखेंगे नहीं. अभी नहीं नहीं, वो आपका प्रश्न हो सकता है, उनका क्वेश्चन तो मैंने क्लियर जवाब दिया। नहीं, ये भी आपने, आई थिंक जो you are putting a blame which is not necessarily there may have been instances, I am not saying that, but what I'm saying is to say that it has been grossly blamed and others. Please tell me one instance in last 2 years. नहीं, अब तो टाइम होराइजन अब आगे बढ़ाते जाएंगे. I can't respond because at least I can respond for the last 2 years in what way, LIC has been, government has influenced LIC, which is detrimental to the interest of LIC or its policyholders or its business. There is none. So that is a good thing. That is a good thing. There will be more light which will be shining going forward. So you must commend the government's commitment to get it listed so that there is always more questioning. There is also, more and more every quarter results, other things, this will come. So these will be the collateral benefit. मतलब disinvestment receipts की तो बात कर रहे हैं कि वो तो obviously that is also something which comes back to the government only for the people of India. If government gets some disinvestment receipts, nobody is going to just do it. If we want capex to be done, if we want, the fertilizer subsidy to be, which is going to grow and to be funded. So the government will always require everyday resources because every day these challenges are also emerging.
Okay, friends, the last question.
Hello.
Friends, I think everybody has got a chance. Let the gentleman ask here and then we'll close after that. You can ask later. I think this is
My
enough.
question is to Mr. Pandey.
Yeah, please hold on. Please hold on. Please hold on. Please hold on. Ask him. Let him ask the question. You have already asked 3 questions. Please hold on. आप बत पूछिए. हाँ जी हाँ पूछिए.
My question is to Mr. Malhotra. This is a very small amount of shares are being offloaded, so it's not surely it's not privatization, but still it's a listed company now. Will soon be a listed company, LIC. So would there be a reduction in the power and discretion of government in running LIC?
See, even earlier, this company was being managed through a professional board. It's not that, as was being hinted, that certain decisions, were being taken at the behest of the government. I would totally deny that. At least I am not aware of that. It is quite possible that sometimes decisions go, because these are judgments that the government, that the board makes. Enough, provisions have been put in, mechanisms have been put in place that the board takes independent decisions and the board can go wrong in those decisions. We talk about those, we forget about the good decisions, those which yield good returns. While that, of course, in a democracy and even in a, for the fourth, for the press to fourth estate, to question those decisions and look at it, through another lens. But I would like to assure you that, at least we are not aware of such decisions. And going forward also, the board would be professionally managed, and decisions will be taken, in the interest of, as was mentioned, the policyholders. On the one hand, they are supreme, no doubt about it. The policyholders are supreme. The companies, the corporations, everyone exists for the customers. And so if they are not there, the company and the shareholders are not going to be there. So their interest is paramount. That will continue. Of course, the shareholders' interest will have to be also looked into, and without them, the company can't move forward. So that's the approach that the board will follow, and the government will facilitate that. Thank you.
Thank you, friends. We close the press conference now. I thank the dignitaries on the dais. Thank you.